for July the 7th, 2026. Attendance has been taken. Councillor Chambers has sent a message that he's going to be a little bit late. I haven't heard from Councillor Haley or Councillor Coleman yet, but everyone else is here. We have a quorum, so we can begin the meeting. We have an agenda in front of us. It is a special meeting, so we're not going to be adding anything or taking anything away from the agenda. So I need a mover to get down the floor, please. Councillor Pierce, Councillor Miller. All those in favor of the agenda the way it stands? Thank you. Declaration of pecuniary interests. Councillor Coleman's here. We're just going to give him a minute to get to his desk. Welcome, Councillor Coleman. Declaration of pecuniary interests. If anyone has any on council, you could maybe let me know now. If one creeps up, please let me be the first to know as we move forward. So what we have going on today is public hearings. On the podium at the back, there are there's paperwork that allows you to follow any of these issues that are going to be brought forward tonight. So if you want to be kept in the loop as to anything that happens today, please give us your name and your email address, and we'll make sure any correspondence to any of these issues will be sent to you so that you don't miss out anything moving forward. So 4.1, which is the downtown Paris zoning recommendation. Brandon's going to come and speak on behalf of the county on the proposal. It is a public meeting, and I'm going to declare the public meeting open now. And we're going to call on Brandon for his presentation, please, first.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through to everyone in the room here. Good afternoon. So as the Mayor mentioned, my name is Brandon Courtleaf. I am the Manager of Policy Planning with the County of Brant, and I'm here to present the final recommendation for this zoning bylaw amendment. And there is a piece of this that will also be contemplated in our next item on the agenda, which is the community planning permit system. But what this is a county-initiated zoning bylaw amendment to help implement some of the directions of the Downtown Paris Master Plan. So we had previously presented this in May to collect some feedback and provide some information. Again, just as a reminder, this is a targeted rezoning. There's two areas that we're focusing on here, and the targeted rezoning is for those two selected areas, with initial tools being enabled through the community planning permit system. So area A, sorry, is the public parking lot on Mechanic Street and Broadway Street West. What's being proposed here through the zoning is a proposal to increase the maximum height of the current lands from 4 to 5 stories to enable a mixed-use development, and to provide some specific directions such as step backs above the 3rd story to help the future buildings fit in with the surrounding character of downtown Paris. It's worth noting that a mixed-use development is already permitted on the site. The zoning would allow that today. It's just that we're looking for that one additional story of height for the land. And area B, which is the land beside the Wincy Mills there, to Mechanic and West River Street. What we're doing is proposing to restrict the residential that's currently allowed there because there is a high risk for flooding in that particular piece of land. And what we would do is add a permission for a potential parking structure, as well as some public park space, which would likely be closer to the river, the Nith River. And portions of the area would also be rezoned for natural heritage and flood protection in particular. So that's a very, very high-level summary of what's proposed and what's kind of changed since you last saw this. In particular, the proposal we saw in May, we had suggested that 6 stories may be appropriate, but here we're suggesting that 5 would be more appropriate for that mixed-use development. Just showing a comparison of the building heights along Broadway Street. So you'll see that the proposal that's before you tonight would be approximately 20 meters in height, so 5 stories plus a mezzanine or some rooftop mechanical, and that would effectively match the Royal, which is 3 stories. Sorry, it says 3 there. 3 above the commercial with a rooftop amenity space. The Wincy Mills is 3 stories, just showing that's approximately 15 meters. And the proposed parking garage, what we're contemplating is either 3 or 4 stories, but the height would be maxed out at 15 meters. And just again, some conceptual renderings. my colleague Haley presented some of this with the update to the downtown master plan. So what we've done is taken this kind of conceptual idea, what the zoning would enable, and we've plugged that into these renderings to give an idea of what that could look like in the future. But again, these are just conceptual. They'll be subject to further design considerations as the actual developments, the applications for the developments come forward. So again, just intended for discussion purposes, these are, but we recognize these provide some helpful visuals for everyone. So that's the end of my presentation, but we're happy to take any questions or comments at this point. Otherwise, I'll pass it back to the mayor to continue the public meeting.
Okay. The only person that we have that's registered to speak, everyone has the opportunity, everyone in the room to speak once we open it up to the floor. Mr. Kennedy, Bill Kennedy? If you want to come up and, Mr. Kennedy, if you could just give us your full name and your address just for the clerk, please. And you have 10 minutes, and I believe you have a presentation.
My name is Bill Kennedy.
Is this microphone on?
I'm a resident of the community. I have some companies that own some properties in the core area of Paris. Some are developed, and there's one site that we're looking to future development on. We're the company who did develop the Royal property. I'm here to pass my opinions on the recommendations for this downtown Paris zoning. I'll give you a little history and move to where we are today. 2001, I'll start there. It was a year of transition and focus on new horizons for my company. We had just sold our last operation. Like so many companies and communities, the global economy came knocking at our door. Paris was my home, and the focus now was, how can I contribute to the town? In 2002, we redeveloped our building on Elm Street, expanded it, and changed its use. In 2006, we purchased from Bose Publishing 61 Grand River Street, where Paris Star. Our goal was to develop it and hopefully begin a resurgence of the Paris core area. It was dying, like so many downtown communities in Ontario. What Paris had that other communities did not was the two rivers, the Grand and the Nif. What was seen as a liability by most of the community was actually an asset. Protecting that asset is why I'm here. Not for the money that can be made from property, but how does property contribute to the betterment of the community? In 2008, after a few years of disappointments, the development at 61 Grand River was finally approved, and we were able to complete a redeveloped functional building. That approval would not have been possible without the support of the municipal representatives and staff. Our company completed and opened the building with the support and efforts of the municipality. In 2010, we moved to what we felt was one more necessary improvement to ensure core revitalization and purchased the Royal Hotel for redevelopment. This again was a high-risk venture. In 2015, plans for redevelopment were discussed with then Mayor Ron Eddy and Development Manager Dave Johnson. In 2016, parking problems were identified, and the BIA was consulted concerning installation of parking meters, the first serious look for a parking solution. In 2017, forward planning was necessary. My company saw the first rendition of the Paris Master Plan, which led to a subsequent discussion with Alliston Newton, the municipal representative responsible at that time for the coordination of the master plan. After several meetings, our company indicated interest in this project as it coincided with other downtown developments that we were working on. In 2025, our development plan was now in the completion stage, and our company committed to move ahead. Concept plans have been completed based on the previous supplied master plan. 2026, there is now a proposal to alter the previous plan, and that makes our concept unworkable. We are now required to rethink its viability. Our proposal was in keeping with the community goals and maintain a concept to develop the core as a consumer-friendly pedestrian neighborhood. That development certainly requires cooperation from the county to succeed. It appears the county is now proposing a high-density living environment. This new proposal will affect the existing businesses in the core area of Paris, especially those in the center and northern business area located on Grand River Street North and William Street. The movement of the parking structure to the new proposed site and the change to a higher rise building development will certainly affect negatively affect the businesses in that core and change the look and makeup of the special business area in the near future. What is the vision for the next century? Have we changed that vision for the downtown area from a place to relax, enjoy, a place to absorb the beauty of what we are privileged to possess? That beauty should be shared with the greater community. Are we going to build the prettiest town in southwestern Ontario to create a living environment for all, or are we going to focus on higher density residential living space in this core, which is purely financially driven? The parking garage, if built, needs to remain in its originally planned position, and buildings need to be maintained at a maximum height of 4 stories and complement the current building architectures. My question is, who was consulted from the community on this new proposal? And what professional consulting groups suggested that this proposal is a superior plan to the original Paris master plan? Is this really what we want? And I'm open for any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Council, do you have questions to the presenter? Councilor Miller?
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you're allowing us questions. I wanted to ask Bill through you, what is the issue with the proposed parking structure location versus where it was originally going to go?
Okay, where you're proposing to put the parking now, you have to look at William Street. So the distance that you're going to have to walk from the existing parking spot out to William Street or even to the core area versus in its central location. Will it affect Mechanic Street or the southern part of Grand River? No, it's just as convenient from here. But the core will be affected by the movement of that parking garage.
Okay, so just, it sounds like you're saying it's a bit too far for
pedestrian traffic. If we are trying to create a pedestrian-friendly environment for downtown Paris, it becomes, what is the commercial area of this core going to be? Is it going to be, as it has been developed, for transient traffic, people to come in and shop in unique boutiques and stores? It cannot compete with what's going out on 24 on Rest Acres Road. It is not going to be able to compete what's going out. It's in a unique area and should be allowed to develop in a unique way.
Okay, thank you. And then the second question is, you prefer to keep the buildings at 4 stories versus any higher. Why is that?
Okay, it's real simple. Go 6 stories on this one. If you don't think that Mechanic Street, where Tough Hardware and down that will not go 6 stories, you're mistaken, it will. And you'll have to prove that. The next one is going to be over to William Street. And if you go with the Pickering buildings that go along William Street down to the CIBC Bank, that will go to 6 stories. And the development that I am looking at, and I'm looking at developing from the northern part, so from William Street north toward Penmarvin to where the post office is, that block. I've currently got that developed as a 3-story building. Not very profitable to do that. I can move that to 6 stories and I can make a whole lot more money. So if it's about money, I'm going for 6 stories. If it's about the place I live, I want that left at 3 stories to be compatible with what is happening in this core.
Thank you.
I just want to let everyone know that we're gathered here today to talk about the zoning, not the master plan. So just stay focused on the zoning, and that's why we've gathered, that's what's on the agenda. And
I understand that, so I'm giving my objections to the proposed rezoning. That this is what will happen with that rezoning if it's approved.
Okay, that's fine. We have it in the minutes that you did mention the master plan quite often.
Only because previous developments, previous planning was based on that master plan. No objections have been made because that master plan seemed to be compatible. It was only recently that that has been changed. So to refer to the previous master plan is, I've not seen any new master plan. I've seen nothing that replaces that plan that we were given to create development from.
Thank you. Any other questions to the delegation? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone in the audience want to come up and talk about something for 10 minutes? Come on up. A lot. Come on up, yeah. And again, we just need your name and your address for the clerk.
I'm going to be a lot shorter than 10 minutes. My name is David Spencer. I live on West River Street. I can actually kind of see my house from here. I also have some issues with the development of more than 4 stories in the downtown core. I agree with basically everything that Bill said. I don't know who was consulted running for council this year, and in walking up the street, looking to get 25 signatures to run for council, every single person complained about the development downtown, complained about the elevation of the buildings. This is supposed to be the prettiest little town in Ontario, and it's not going to be the prettiest little town in Ontario if we keep building 5-story, 6-story, 8-story buildings. Thank you.
Questions to the presenter? Does anyone have anything? Nope, okay. Anyone else, come on up. Mr. Swanson. If you want to give us your full name, please, and who you represent. And you have 10 minutes, my friend.
10 minutes. David Swanson, 384 Robinson Road.
Thank you.
Curious, these big projects always, they'll always have a big effect. But as we've noticed in the BIA, as Councillor House mentioned, 1,500 people coming in spending $20 in the downtown would make a big difference. So when we're doing planning like this, property tax income, that's a big factor for what we're up to as a municipality, and more bodies in the downtown is going to be something we're going to need. And it's a tough call, and we'll see what council does, but I think that more bodies, spending more money in the downtown is a big step in the right direction. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Swanson? Seeing none, thank you. Next. Yeah, come on up. And your name and your address, please, for the clerk.
Kristen Bugner, 75 Dufferin Ave in Brantford.
Thank you.
I'm speaking to you today as president of the Brantford Home Builders Association on behalf of our association to express our support for the County of Brant's community planning permit system, while also outlining several significant concerns regarding the proposed facility service and matters fee and the proposed residential amenity space requirements. The Brantford Home Builders Association supports the community planning permit system and recognizes...
Mr. Mayor, point of order.
Yeah.
I think we're talking about a wrong subject here.
Yeah,
Oh.
excuse me, you're here for the, yours is next.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I thought we could just...
No.
Carry forward.
You have to wait till the next item. But we do know where you live and we know your name, so thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Next, anyone else want to speak to the Paris Downtown Plan, the zoning? I'm going to ask for the second time, is there anyone in the room that wants to speak to the zoning of the Paris? I'm going to ask for the third and final time, is there anyone in the room that wants to speak now to the downtown Paris zoning proposal? Seeing none, I'll call this part of the meeting closed, and I will get council to get it on the floor for discussion. Councillor Oakley and Councillor Howes, any discussion? Councillor Bell?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few questions for staff, if that's okay. Just for clarity, on page 4 of the report, you indicate that the maximum proposed height for a parking structure will be 15 metres. On page 5, you indicate 16. So simple answer, simple question.
Through the mayor, yes, thank you for pointing that out. That is a typo. It is 15 meters.
Okay, thank you. Second question, what's the rationale for one parking space per residential unit on Broadway, and where will that parking be located? Actually in the Broadway building or in the new parking structure?
Through the mayor, the rationale is that in a downtown area, there is kind of an ebb and flow of folks using parking spaces. So we do have an amount of parking that is here that can provide some overnight parking for people. So 2 per dwelling unit in those cases, which are usually smaller in an apartment building, the units, would be overkill, so to speak. And some of that was considered as part of the parking study that was done. The intention with requiring a parking space is so that regardless of where it's provided, whether it's on-site or not, there's still the impetus to pay cash in lieu of the parking space so that we can capture the value of the parking that's still needed. So in downtown areas like this, there's an opportunity to provide consolidated parking, which is the idea behind the parking structure. It's the idea behind the parking lots that we have now. But if development is occurring, they would be paying into the kind of pot of money to support the infrastructure for those parking spaces. So whether it be the parking structure, whether it be improvements to the parking lots, the surface lots, that's where that cash in lieu option would come. What I will say as well is that there is a general kind of desire to provide parking on site for developments. That seems to be preferred for people, but downtown here it's a bit tighter with land. The value of the land is something we need to consider in that regard. And lots of surface parking may not be the best use of that, so we're trying to provide flexibility, a flexible approach to addressing our parking concerns, but also addressing what the most appropriate use of our downtown land would be.
Okay, so just to be clear, the parking structure may accommodate the parking for people that live in the new building on Broadway.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Councillor House?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the appropriate time, I've got some more comments, but this is specifically a question for Brandon. So through the mayor, Brandon, for the benefit of the folks who maybe didn't read all of this, can you speak a little bit to the fact that the proposed height or the proposed number of stories is not the same for all parts of downtown Paris? Can you just walk everybody through that a little bit?
Of course, through the mayor. So thank you for that question. So we've done engagement on this project since 2024. We hosted some open houses, and at that time, people were invited to come into the council chambers here and play around with some blocks to determine maybe what appropriate heights would be in various areas. We also did a survey at that time and got some feedback. So what we're proposing here is to establish heights under the new zoning through the CPPS that are more particular to areas, specific areas, based on the feedback from the public. So there's a more generic permission right now for 4 stories across the board, whereas we recognize that some people prefer the 3 stories, maybe on the main street, but there could be appropriate areas where infilling of 4 or 5 stories might be appropriate. So that's the impetus behind providing for some variation in various locations. It's based on the public feedback and where the highest and best use of the land could be for future potential development.
Thank you. And through the mayor, just a quick follow-up. Could you also walk everyone through how a design overlay works?
Through the mayor, so what is proposed, not as part of the zoning, but which would be deferred to the next conversation about CPPS, is a design overlay. And that overlay would work similar to zoning, but what it does is it enables tools that we don't have through regular zoning. And those tools include controlling the facade of a building, what things look like. We don't have the ability to do that under our current framework with site plan control or zoning. So the community planning permit system is a great tool to help enable that. And that's something we've heard from, one of the main concerns downtown, quite frankly, is, and we've heard it here, is the character. So being able to regulate that a bit more strictly and to align with kind of community expectations, that's where that design overlay would provide a benefit.
Thank you.
Councillor Oakley.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll actually, I have comments, not questions, so I'll hold them for now.
Okay. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Couple questions, through to Brandon. Brandon, first question, I think this is a draft version of the flood hazard assessment report. This isn't the final one. When we're looking at the two areas that you have mapped out, I think you call them A and B, what's the lowest residential height you can have? Can it be ground level?
Through the mayor, no, it cannot. So it would need to be above the regulatory flood level. Part of the issue, and why we're considering this corner piece of land for non-residential development, is that the flood heights exceed 6 meters there in a regulatory flood event. So removing the opportunity for residential there decreases the risk for the municipality. As we get closer to William Street, the flood depths go down, so there is the opportunity for potential development within the special policy area. The province recognizes that this area is historically an area of economic value to a municipality, so it does allow some of those permissions to happen, as long as we are contemplating the risk to the municipality that it has had.
Okay, so it's different depending on. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
That's a little bit confusing. Okay, then I wanted to ask you, so the highest that we're talking about, because I think Mr. Spencer mentioned, 5, 6, or even 8, but the highest that we're looking at, and you said it wasn't the same throughout, is 5 stories, correct? We're not looking at 6, we're not looking at 7?
Through the mayor, that's correct. So we had originally come forward with 6 stories. That has been since dropped to 5, and nothing else throughout the downtown would be proposed to go above that.
Okay, those are my 2 questions. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor McAlpine.
Do we have a ballpark figure of the number of parking spaces that would be available in that parking garage that's proposed? And follow up with that too, is the number of possibility of apartments and businesses.
Yep, through the mayor, I can answer the question about the businesses and the apartments. So the property across the road would be looking at approximately 80 to 100 dwelling units. And I believe the design showed 4 commercial parking or commercial retail areas, but essentially the entire ground floor would be required to be retail. And I may ask Haley Gilmore to come up and provide some details on the parking if she doesn't mind.
So through the mayor to Councillor McAlpine, it's challenging at this point because there's still so many decisions to be made in terms of the amount of residential growth and things that are happening downtown. But what I can tell you is the parking structure is intended to fit the needs of our parking needs up until 2050. And so the idea is once we have a clear understanding of residential growth rates, we have an understanding of the commercial growth rates, we can start to factor that into our kind of comprehensive model that's been built. At this time, the proposed kind of size based on the assessment ranges between 250 to 350, but again, it's challenging at this point based on, just because there's a lot of unknowns in terms of development.
And approximate costs, ballpark, for, say, a parking structure like that?
Similarly, at this time, it's challenging for us to know the approximate costs. The intention of the parking structure, any sort of additional parking infrastructure that we add, is it's going to match the scope and scale of the need of the downtown up until 2050. And so what that looks like in terms of cost, it's going to be heavily dependent on that final space count and the materials and all of those pieces. So once we have a clearer understanding of what that looks like, that'll be brought forward for future decisions.
When I did a quick, just Google search, you're probably looking 10 to 15 million for a project about that size. And just to put in perspective, we'd probably have to charge somewhere around 6,000 per parking space or recoup that over the course of 30 years. So that adds significant costs for local businesses or people arriving. So it's, there's going to be an economic impact, definitely going to that format that I don't think would make it worthwhile, but that's just a comment.
Through the mayor to the councillor, just for clarity, although the zoning is going to allow the flexibility to put a parking garage there and the flexibility to see a taller building across the street at 5, nothing's saying that that's actually going to happen. It's just setting the zoning parameters in place. Anything that happens thereafter is still to be determined. So it just gives the flexibility to see that happen. Whether that happens or not is still another step that comes after this.
Councillor Bell?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Brandon. On page 4 of your report, you've got a table there which talks about street frontage, and it has the 5 streets of downtown and the maximum heights that you are recommending for each of those streets. Are we approving this as part of this recommendation, or will it come in the second recommendation?
Through the mayor, that is part of the second recommendation under the community planning permit system.
So to be clear for people that may or may not have read it, it does talk about Grand River Street North maximum height of 3 stories.
Correct.
Mechanic Street and Broadway 5 stories. William Street and West River Street 4 stories.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Haley?
Through you. So if I wanted to petition, I'm trying to understand the CPPS2 that comes in. If I wanted to petition to go higher than 5 stories, could I bring that to council?
You would need to request an amendment. So the way we've structured it is that you would need to request an amendment to the community planning permit bylaw. And no amendments are allowed unless council resolves to allow it within the first 5 years of the bylaw. So council could decide not to see it and not to contemplate that type of application. It gives a bit of certainty in what we're adopting here without the need for kind of site-specific and incremental increases over time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Councillor McAlpine and then Councillor House.
So has this proposal been put to the local business association, and what kind of feedback did we have from them?
Yep, through the mayor, we met with the BIA board, and we presented some of this information to them, had a bit of a discussion. I think that the general consensus is similar to what we've heard from the public, that the character of the buildings is what is of most concern, and the height of it, which is, again, we've got that feedback and we were able to reduce the building by 1 story. But overall, there is a desire for especially rental units, but more residential, to help support the businesses instead of them just being a tourist destination during the day, providing for some other opportunities for patronage at differing hours. And that seemed to be kind of the general consensus.
And the Grand River Conservation Authority, looks like they're okay with us building that, but in the past, they've very severely limited the number of apartments that would be available to what was existing in the past. And that would be nowhere near to 80 to 100. So have they changed that feedback for that particular property?
Through the mayor, in a sense, yes. So what has happened here is that more information has been provided by the municipality and more background work. So that risk assessment that's been done has helped us all kind of get a sense of what the potential is to develop within the parameters of the special policy area. Mm-hmm. The understanding, or the general understanding, is that if you're not increasing the risk, if you're reducing it, that's a good thing. And if you are able to provide safe access to the buildings, that's a good thing as well. So those are the two kind of big pieces that we've had the conversation with the Grand River, the GRCA about. Less so the density and the unit count. It's reducing the risk overall for people. And ensuring that if there is an emergency, recognizing that those people will need to get out quickly and making sure that that is appropriately done. So the conversation, so to speak, has shifted from that specific unit count, which isn't in our policies, to addressing the risk, which is in our policies.
Councillor Howes?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. It's okay for comments at this point?
I think so. You've got comments, Councillor Oakley. Yeah, comments, then Councillor Howes.
Okay, thank you. I'm, through you, I'm coming at this with perhaps a different perspective. I think I'm the only person around the council table who's lived in an apartment in downtown Paris. What really caught my eye in this report was the reference to a thriving downtown. When I lived downtown 40 years ago, you could buy a TV, a pair of jeans, and running shoes all in the same block of downtown. And now the retail landscape has changed, obviously, but I do believe that 80 to 100 new residential dwellings in downtown will indeed help our downtown businesses thrive. Whether you sell paint and wallpaper or home decor, gift items, Chinese food, or tea, more people living and working in downtown Paris is good for business. With all that said, I was firmly against six-story buildings in our downtown core. I still am. But then I watched as county staff listened to feedback and modified the height limit recommendation to 5 stories or 20 meters to align more or less with the Royal and a little bit taller than the Wincy Mills, with important step backs above the 3rd story. Basically, it's 1 story higher than what is already allowed. I can live with that, especially with the new design control element attached that Brandon talked about a few minutes ago. Specific to the parking structure, I will say this. All the vocal people who today say we are ruining Paris with the idea of a parking garage, 10 years from now will be equally vocal, saying, why didn't you plan for parking solutions? And I think it's important that we make necessary decisions now. And that doesn't mean that a parking garage is going to get built next year, but I think the people who are mad at us now for this idea, there'll be just as many people mad at us later. And while parking structures are not typical nor ideal for small town charm, in a situation where we are landlocked by 2 rivers, I see it as the only real solution. And I think the proposed location is suitable. I like the idea of it better back by the Nith instead of in the middle of downtown, in the middle of this parking lot out here. If people who live and work in downtown use the parking garage, that means there will be more room for customers for the downtown businesses to use the traditional lots. So I support the strategy as proposed.
Thanks, Councillor Howes. Councillor Oakley, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm going to agree with a lot of what my colleague Councillor Howes has said. I'll also speak a few things for being the BIA representative from council for 3.5 years. In speaking to a lot of the business owners, the board itself, I think we do a great job supporting Grand River Street North in terms of it has the charm and I think it fits the bill for prettiest little town in Ontario. But the businesses on Mechanic Street, on William Street, they often feel left out. People have nothing drawing them that way as much to our downtown street here. And our downtown should be, in my opinion, more than just the one street. I think developing out here helps enhance that. In addition, it brings all the residential that supports businesses that aren't just tourism focused, as Councillor Howes highlighted. And in terms of the charm, I would ask folks to look out there and think seriously and critically on whether or not the sea of asphalt that currently is out that direction fits the bill for prettiest little town either. I think there's a serious opportunity to build something that is compatible with Grand River Street North back this way and enhance the whole downtown as a whole. So I will be supporting this, and thank you very much.
Any other comments? Councillor Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do support the staff recommendations. Like my colleagues, I believe it's very important to increase the residential population to secure a vibrant long-term future for downtown and its businesses and its retailers. Our parking needs assessment supports the need for more parking, and the location proposed, given the limitations on other uses for that land, makes good logical sense. I think the proposed building height limitations for all 5 downtown streets are well argued and will not result in buildings that are out of place or that will visually diminish the existing streetscapes. And a final comment. Our initial downtown master plan was adopted by Council in 2019 after extensive public input. One of the very first things I ever attended in regard to this council was a meeting actually in Wincy Mill talking about how we might see downtown. So the expectation of a downtown parking structure is now nearly a decade old. The prospect of a mixed-use building in Broadway is nearly a decade old. And yes, we have moved the parking structure location, but that's for good, sound, environmental and technical reasons. I think the public engagement, if you go all the way back to 2019 and before that, has been thorough and extensive. And I thank staff for their work and perseverance. It's been a long road.
Any more comments? I'm sorry, Councillor Kyle.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I'd echo a lot of the sentiments of my colleagues around the table, and in thanks to staff for all of their hard work on this. I think to add some more different perspectives rather than repeating what we've already heard. As someone who farms outside of Paris, protecting the agricultural land is something we've talked a lot about the last little while, and it's obviously something that's quite important. And in chatting with a lot of different folks about this over the last little while, many of the people who have concerns about the downtown also have concerns about preserving things like farmland. And so I think that objectively we can all agree on that, and though there's some times where we might differ on how we achieve that. So if we would like to really preserve our farmland for future generations, I feel like this type of decision we're looking at tonight is something that helps us to ensure that we're making the best use of the land already inside of our settlement boundaries. So that means things like redevelopment, infill, and appropriate intensification in the right location. So in a sense, growing up rather than continuing to grow out. That said, we're also not approving a building tonight. We're not approving any architectural drawings, no landscaping. What we're doing is approving a planning framework that future proposals will have to work within, that gives us that sense of control over trying to decide what, how high and what things should look like so that we can have that prettiest little town moniker still. So I think one thing that I appreciate is that the staff have really listened. This isn't the same proposal we saw several months ago. There's been lots of tweaking and changing, reducing the heights and the stronger heritage protections, things like that. So that tells me that the public input has made the proposal better. And I think it's important to note that none of us wants to lose what makes Paris special. I know I certainly don't. Preserving a community doesn't mean freezing it in time, though. So every generation before us has added something to Paris while protecting what they felt mattered the most. And so now I feel it's our council's turn to do that as well. So supporting this report is, for me, about striking that balance. It's about protecting our heritage, protecting the river, as well as protecting our farmland in a roundabout way. So while planning, we're responsibly for the people who will call Brant home in the years ahead. So with that in mind, I'll be supporting the report tonight.
Thanks, Councillor Kyle. Anyone else have anything to say before we call the vote? We have a recommendation in front of us. You can't speak anymore. I called 3 times. I asked if there was any speakers in the room and no one. Okay, that opportunity is gone. We do have a recommendation in front of us. Mr. Clerk, do you want to read the recommendation?
Through your worship, the staff recommendation that is on the floor is as follows. That report RPT-0271-26 be received as information, and that ZBA 10-26-BK being a county-initiated zoning bylaw amendment to implement near-term downtown Paris zoning permissions and support the objectives of the downtown Paris master plan be approved, and that a decision on the downtown Paris overlay for the proposed community planning permit system be considered as part of the official plan amendment and community planning permit bylaw presented with report RPT-0257-26.
Everyone's clear? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? And carried. Thank you. We're moving on now to our next public hearing. If no one's interested in the second public hearing, it's a good chance to escape. If not, you're welcome to stay. 4.2 is our community planning permit system, final recommendation of adoption. And it's also a public meeting, and I'll call it open now, and I'll call on Brandon to give his report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to note, as folks are leaving, there is a decision as part of this component that is related to downtown. So if you are interested in the new zoning for downtown, I'll put the plug in, but there's lots of information online as well. I won't belabor this too much with a full presentation, as as you can see by the pages on your desk, there's quite a bit of information here to be discussed. Apologies for that, but it is all important, and we tried to kind of spread it out a little bit over time. There was more than, I think, a week to, we provided some opportunities for that information being online, and hopefully you've had a chance to sift through it all. So the preparation of this community planning permit system, the bylaw, the OPA, and all of the kind of implementation work has really been a comprehensive process. What it is updating our zoning bylaw. What we're doing is implementing an official plan that was approved by council in 2023. It's important to remember we didn't start this work just this year. We didn't start it a couple weeks ago. Really what's been happening has been happening since 2019 when we first started our official plan project. Since then, we've had lots of input from council, from residents, from stakeholders. The development community as well have been engaged in ongoing conversations about growth, about managing that growth, about what land use looks like, things like natural heritage, conservation, protection, our downtown areas, certain important things for the community. And what this bylaw does is tries to capture all of those conversations in a new framework for the municipality. And what we're discussing tonight is the implementation of all of those conversations and the decisions made during the OP process. So what this bylaw does and what the report outlines is the opportunity to provide some significant value to the county in updating our development approval framework. In some cases, our existing zoning standards have predated amalgamation. Some of them were carried over from the former townships and towns. And over time, we've seen how many of these more outdated standards can kind of create unintended challenges as our community develops and grows. So throughout this process, we've come to council on numerous occasions explaining individual components of this. It's a new thing for all of us involved, but explaining those building blocks of the community planning permit system and all of that work that's been done behind the scenes and in the public realm here at these meetings has led to tonight's recommendation. So it's a major milestone, but not the end of a process by any means. What this will do is significantly modernize the county's planning framework, but there will be ongoing monitoring, ongoing framework reviews. What we have set up in the report is a dedication to come back to council within 6 months with more information on how things are going, and then again within the year. And of course, there would be opportunities if we notice that there are things that are not working. It's a new framework. We're flexible and we can come back to council. Council is able to amend its own bylaw, but again, the amendments to the bylaw that are restricted for 5 years, those are privately initiated ones, just to clarify. A couple of the comments you'll see, and again, apologies for some of the late correspondence that was given to you. Comments continue to roll in even as I was sitting at my desk there. We were receiving emails and we were trying our very best to address them all in as timely a fashion as possible, recognizing that is part of this new process is providing that opportunity for review and feedback from the planning department and being available and accessible to residents with their questions. The stuff that's been refined in the bylaw that's presented to you tonight, what I would like to just reiterate is that the framework of the bylaw has not fundamentally changed since the April release. What's been changing and what's been adjusted are the very specific kind of implementation pieces and standards in the bylaw that people, most who have individual properties have noticed or have evaluated how the bylaw might work in that context, and have requested us to contemplate changes. And what we do is then assess to see, is that in the public interest, the greater public interest for the municipality, and how can we provide a potential benefit to that property owner as well. There's a balance to be found there. So I just thought that that's important to note. With respect to the public input and transparency, transparency is a key priority of this entire project. That's why we broke things down, and we've been trying to get people involved as best as possible. We recognize that some of these larger projects aren't, I don't want to say well received, but aren't maybe easily received by the public, and that people aren't often interested in them until they recognize that it impacts them. But to that end, we've tried to bake some of that flexibility into the bylaw, recognizing that we will get those inquiries and questions continuing regardless of an adoption today or a delayed adoption. Those questions will come in, and we will continue as staff are dedicated to working towards that, again, with the monitoring framework, bringing things forward. But what we really need to do now, and what we've noticed, is to really enact the bylaw and to use it and to see how it really functions. We can only put mock applications through the bylaw so much. We can only address so many things kind of hypothetically, but we do, as is outlined in the report, the professional opinion right now is that this is the best idea, the best tool for the county with respect to replacing the zoning and site plan control. We've made lots of adjustments based on the feedback. The agricultural community, we met with them, we met with the Heritage Committee as well. There's been adjustments made in those regards. We've also made adjustments to the transition policies. That's been a big one that we've heard feedback from the development community on, ensuring that they're flexible and practical, while also considering the county's best interests. Natural heritage and parking have both been things that have come up a little bit. Natural heritage particularly, we've run into some kind of transparency issues over my career here over the last 10 years. What I will note is that the current zoning bylaw, I've always found it's not as illustrative of what is actually being protected as it could be. Not all of the woodlands, for example, are shown in the mapping, but they are captured in the policies of the plan, the official plan, and in the provisions of the bylaw. So you'll see that there is mapping changes with respect to that, applying those provisions to other properties. But what we're trying to do is really reiterate that is already there. It's just not clearly communicated, and we need it to be clearly communicated so we can all have those conversations and make sure that the evaluate development potential for people individually on their properties. One more thing that's come up quite a bit is the facilities, services, and matters conversation. So a key feature of the framework is this ability to support additional height and density where it is already permitted or contemplated by the official plan. We don't have to permit it as of right, but what we can do is capture some of that value that is obtained by a developer coming in and receiving that additional height or density that we do enable, and providing a community benefit to the greater community. So ultimately, the adoption of this bylaw and this framework, what it will do will get us to a point where we're truly implementing our own official plan. We're not having others implement it for us through site-specific changes to our current zoning bylaw, which again, I'll reiterate, is not the implementation tool of this official plan. It's of the previous one. So the recommendation in front of you, it represents good planning and is in the public interest. It's a good step for the County of Brant, a big step, but it is a good step, and for the residents and business owners as well. I will note that there is an opportunity tonight, based on the conversations that we have, to direct specific refinements. We're happy to take those into consideration. We're happy to provide input on any of those if they would like to be considered. And we do have the opportunity to bring forward some additional information if that's required before what's proposed as the enactment date, which would be August 1st of this year. So with that, maybe I'll just invite Justine Giancola up briefly. She's been on the consulting team from Dillon, just helping us out with this project, and it's greatly appreciated. And I'll just invite her to maybe provide some closing remarks on the project from from a different perspective.
Thank you, Brandon. So I just wanted to say a few final remarks. Maybe I'll start with a bit of a congratulations. This is a pretty substantial milestone. A humongous amount of kind of work and effort went into updating this bylaw and really establishing a new framework for the county that allows staff to really utilize their expertise, their professional competency, their technical knowledge to administer the development approval process and to work within the parameters and limitations that you've established through this bylaw. I'm very honored to have worked very closely with staff on this exercise and have observed their attention to detail through the process, their diligence, their care and effort put into really trying to educate community members on quite technical information. Getting into development standards, this isn't something that many members of the community maybe are particularly familiar with the current standards. And so trying to fundamentally change that system, it is quite the task. And doing this county-wide, I really do think sets up the county for a really foundational framework moving forward. As municipalities have been tasked to do more with less, I believe that this new framework establishes an approach to regulate development that will serve community builders, staff, council, and community members for decades to come, and really facilitate development in alignment with your official plan. County staff have demonstrated exemplary leadership through this process and developing the bylaw, and you're now very well positioned to start implementing that new system and continue to monitor and evaluate it as you go. And again, I'd be happy to answer any questions or any feedback that may come up through the process. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, and thank you for all your hard work. I know that you fit right into our team, and they appreciated everything you brought to the process. With that being said, there's two people that have registered to speak today, and that's Jay and Eric. If you want to come up, please, and are you both here or just one? Just one. Just give us your full name and who you represent, please.
Certainly. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, members of the public. Thank you for your time this evening. Full name is Jay McGuffin, Principal Planner, Monteith Brown Planning Consultants, and I'm here on behalf of our client, Cedar North Developments, Inc. I'd like to start off, I guess, in terms of echoing some of the comments that were just previously identified. And overall, our client is generally in support of the idea of moving to the community permit planning system. With a caveat, there are a couple of significant concerns that remain. And I'd also like to commend the work that Brandon has been undertaking with us in that regard over the past week. He has been responding to us almost instantly. He's been very attentive. Unfortunately, in terms of the position that we sit with right now, we're still quite far away in terms of a resolution. Our client has a recently approved Ontario Land Tribunal decision that resulted from a settlement between council and our client that was worked on and negotiated with gives and takes on both sides of the table that allowed for development permissions across the entirety of their subdivision in Northeast Paris. As council may or may not know, my client and their engineer have been racing toward registration of their first phase through their detailed engineering submissions in order to get that subdivision in place to allow for the development of a new school. Our review of the CPP, which just was brought to our attention in the past week, has identified a number of concerns in relation to the zoning that was agreed to in that settlement with council and approved by the OLT in late fall of 2025. So the ink is yet dry on that decision, And the zoning permissions that were allowed through that decision are now being, I don't want to say upended, but they're certainly being massaged to affect permissions on height and density of the greatest concern. We identified with staff last week that the approved zoning with the tribunal was not reflected, and staff made immediate effort to bring that framework in, or at least make it available on the public website so that we were able to see it. But it did not encounter all of the issues and concerns that were related to, because the way that it got structured is heights and densities would be treated differently under the community permit plan versus under the approved zoning. Staff came back to us as late as 3 o'clock this afternoon, just before I got in my car to have to drive here. So I wasn't able to read it until I arrived in the parking lot. But we still aren't able to agree to the proposed wording. And if I could maybe draw council's attention, it's wording that planning staff have provided at section 1.18.5 in the bylaw. And there's two clauses there, clause B and clause C. We've reviewed with our client and our client's solicitor, and in our opinion, the front end of that policy is acceptable to our client and appropriate for their situation. And basically what it does is it recognizes that the works that were just approved by the tribunal that gave development rights through the zoning on this property that's currently advancing through development would continue to be supported and applied in addition to the CPP, which was agreeable to our client, and we felt at that point that all of our issues had been resolved. There was concern about the language at the end of that policy that identified, unlike a zoning bylaw, identified that in the opinion of the approval authority, they generally conform with the intent of the official plan and the CPP bylaw, but do not fully align with the provisions of the bylaw. As council likely knows from its work on approving decisions on zoning bylaws are black and white. They're legal documents, and you're either approved to do something or not approved to do something. To add in a policy similar to that of an official plan that then unravels the ability to implement the zoning as it was created doesn't bring any opportunity of finality to the zoning. So a land developer doesn't know if the zoning that they've got can actually be implemented at the time they make their application, unlike a traditional zoning application. And further concerning is subclause C, in which subclause C on our read basically states that although you're getting the permissions of B, you're going to have to make an application. That application's going to have to be approved, and then you're going to have to pay the FSM fees on top of that. The FSM fees to obtain, back of the napkin calculations very quickly, range in the neighborhood of $500,000 in order to get the development rights that were negotiated with council in late October 2025. That does not remain acceptable to our client. We object to those two elements of both sub B and sub C. And without those two policies, we object to a broader range of issues. So we do appreciate 118.5, but we would recommend that the last sentence be struck. And we would recommend and request that sub C be struck. Understanding the late timing on this, it would be our recommendation to request a deferral so that we have the opportunity to review and confirm that the language that's being brought forward isn't being read and reviewed in a car on the way to council chambers, but that we can actually review and identify it and bring it back in a resolution that's agreeable to all parties. That is my submission. I thank you for your time and happy to answer any questions.
Questions to the delegation? No? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And sorry, Eric, were you going to say something?
Just just for clarification, it was from initial review of the fees associated with the potential permits needed for our client's development. It was the planning fees associated with the Class 2 permit system that potentially resulted in that $500,000 calculation, not the FSM. So just wanted to provide that clarity to members of council.
Okay, thank you. Brandon, do you want to respond to that?
Yes, thank you, through the mayor. So yes, I appreciate the back and forth that we've been able to have. We definitely understand the concern in this regard, and I think the intention here is simply to provide a mechanism to the developer if they do wish to make changes to their zoning that's already been enacted, because that sometimes does inevitably happen, without requiring a mechanism, requiring the amendment to the bylaw, because that won't be permitted within the first 5 years. So if it is such the direction of council, we can consider some adjustments to make that maybe a bit clearer in the wording. But that's maybe where I will leave that for the time being, and I'm happy to answer any further questions.
Thanks, Brandon. We do have another registered delegation online. Claire, she registered late this afternoon, but she's still here. Claire?
Hello, yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm a planning student at the University of Waterloo. I've spent my last semester researching the community planning permit systems. Waterloo is about to adopt their own site-specific one, and my hometown is adopting one for the entire municipality. But I can appreciate that Brant is the largest in land area to ever do this, so you're setting quite a precedent. I have a few just clarifications on how the zoning has shifted from your traditional zoning bylaw into the CPPS bylaw. The first one, I was wondering what the precedent or rationale was behind combining your 4 existing industrial zoning into one zone of employment. Because I see on the land use permissions table that all industrial activities are allowed under this zone. So I was just wondering if there was a precedent for that or your justification there.
Brandon, did you want to come back up?
Yeah, through the mayor. Thank you for that question. So the precedent is 2 pieces. So the provincial government is pushing for a standardization of official plans. The designations under that are referred to like as employment areas. So it kind of moves away from these individual type zones to designation. We're trying to reflect that simplicity. And what we thought was that through this tool, specifically with respect to the separation that may be required between industrial uses and sensitive uses, there's effective ways to do that without specific zones. We could just have standards in place for specific setbacks that would align with the D6 guidelines.
Thank you so much. I had 2 more questions. If you're willing to have them. I noticed that the countryside and rural lands seem geographically quite similar, and both of them were previously or generally previously zoned agriculture or rural residential zones. But I've noticed that for rural lands, there's a lot more land use permissions there, and it also mentions private servicing. So I was wondering why there was the differentiation between those 2.
Brandon?
Through the mayor. So again, that is a differentiation that's made at the provincial level. Rural lands under the PPS are supported for some certain levels of development. And so therefore, in order to be consistent with that, our official plan and the proposed CPPS are consistent in that fashion.
Okay, and sorry, I don't know if I misunderstood there, but why was servicing only mentioned for one of those 2 zones?
Through the mayor, so specifically, if there is a development potential, the servicing becomes an issue under the agriculture and countryside zones. Because the development potential is very limited and set to farming, essentially, there's no need to contemplate servicing in that regard. Whereas rural lands, if there's an additional opportunity for density, the servicing solutions become a question. And that's why the servicing is specifically mentioned in that zone.
Thank you so much. Okay, and final question, I'll leave you alone. For the major facility zone, I was wondering why it was the only zone not included on the land use permissions table.
Brandon?
Through the mayor, that may have actually been an omission. So thank you for pointing that out.
Okay, and kind of a secondary question to that. I noticed in the definition that the transition was from resource extraction into major facilities. but under the major facilities definition, I noticed there's the inclusion of data centers. Now, given all that's gone on in Hamilton, I was wondering what was the land use precedent for data centers and how would that be worked into the CPPS?
So through the mayor, thank you for that question. With respect to data centers, there's been a lot of conversation in the news, especially as of late with our neighbors, recognizing that there hasn't been a lot of work done to contemplate those types of uses and where they may be most appropriate. We felt classifying them as a major facility and essentially restricting or limiting them to very few areas in the county of Brant for the time being was the most appropriate approach in the public interest, given the concerns that have been raised in other areas.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you, Brandon. We're going to open it up now to the floor. Is there anyone that wants to come up and speak to what's in front of us? I bet you do. I bet you live on Dufferin too. Come on up, you have 10 minutes.
Pardon my eagerness to speak today. It's hard to have capacity when you've been on a job site in the literal trenches since before the sun. So pardon my enthusiasm. I'm speaking today on behalf of the Brantford Home Builders Association. And while we support the CPPS and recognize its potential to modernize planning approvals, create greater certainty, and reduce unnecessary delays, faster approvals are an important step toward increasing housing supply, and we do appreciate the work the county staff have invested in developing this framework. However, we have significant concerns with the proposed facilities, services, and matters fee. In our view, this functions as an additional development charge at a time when residential construction industry continues to face unprecedented financial pressures. Development projects are already carrying high borrowing costs, escalating construction costs, prolonged approval times, and weakened market demand. Introducing another fee at this point risks making otherwise viable housing projects financially impossible. Our concern is not only with the amount of the proposed fee, but with the principle behind it. The proposal assumes that additional planning permissions automatically create surplus land value that can be captured by the county. In reality, that value is often what allows projects to absorb market fluctuations and remain financeable. It is not excess profit, it is the financial cushion that protects projects against increasing construction costs, financing costs, market uncertainty, and delays. Removing that margin ultimately reduces investment and housing production. The proposed fee also appears to conflict with the county's own housing objectives. The CPPS is intended to encourage gentle intensification, additional housing options, and more efficient use of existing infrastructure. Yet the fee would increase the cost of exactly those forms of development in the county is trying to encourage. The supporting analysis itself acknowledges that the modeling is based on limited case studies and theoretical development scenarios, creating uncertainty about how the fee will affect real projects. Developers already contribute significantly to municipal growth. Development charges fund growth-related infrastructure. Parkland dedication contributes to public open space. Property taxes provide ongoing municipal revenue, and developers frequently construct or finance major infrastructure improvements directly. New housing also increases assessment, supports local business, improves transit viability, makes better use of existing servicing, and helps reduce urban sprawl. Before introducing an entirely new value capture mechanism, Council should clearly identify what public costs are not already being funded through these existing tools. We're also concerned about the proposal to apply these fees retroactively to lands that received increased permissions through the 2023 official plan. Even if staff ultimately revise this approach, Council should provide clear direction that any new fee structure should not be applied to projects that have already proceeded under previously established planning expectations. The proposed residential amenity space requirements within commercial corridor and commercial node areas also require reconsideration. While quality amenity space is important, the proposed standards are likely to reduce achievable unit counts, increase development costs, and discourage compact urban development. In many cases, these requirements duplicate benefits already provided through parkland dedication and nearby public parks. Greater flexibility should be provided by recognizing publicly accessible parks and recreation facilities within walking distance and allowing staff discretion to reduce requirements where equivalent public amenities already exist. The Brantford Home Builders Association respectfully requests that the County Council postpone implementation of the proposed facilities service and matters fee framework and direct staff to undertake additional consultation with the development industry before bringing forward a revised proposal. We also request that Council reconsider the proposed residential amenity space requirements to ensure they support, rather than discourage, the county's housing and intensification objectives. The CPPS represents an important opportunity for the County of Brant to modernize its planning system. We believe the county can achieve that goal without introducing new barriers to housing affordability or investment. By refining these elements now, Council can create a framework that encourages growth while maintaining fairness, transparency, and long-term financial sustainability. Thank you for your consideration to our comments. We appreciate the opportunity to provide input and look forward to continuing to work collaboratively with the County Council and staff to develop policies that encourage housing investment while supporting the county's long-term growth objectives. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Kristen. Aside from FSM, are you, as an organisation, supportive of the rest of the CPPS?
We are 100% in support of the improved CPPS and think that it's definitely mandatory and necessary. Things are moving very quickly, and we just want the opportunity, like you said, you are the experts in this field, we're the experts in our field, so we just want the opportunity to collaborate together.
Perhaps a difficult question for you, if I may, Mr. Chair. If the CPPS was not created and we just updated the zoning bylaw, would that be a problem to you?
No, I think that it is important that we do update that. The city is, for anyone who lives here, is growing so quickly, and supporting all of the infrastructure and housing accommodations for people is the most important thing. So I think it's a great step in the right direction, but allowing the experts to weigh in on this and not move as quickly as they are would be appreciated.
So in a nutshell, can you just say what you really like about the CPPS, why it's better than just updating the zoning bylaw?
Well, I think we all have different opinions as builders. I'm a small builder in our community. Developers would have a totally different take, but I think, you know, being a part of Brantford and Brant County and supporting all of our growth is the most important thing we can do, just as we spoke about earlier. You know, foreseeing the future of building is the most important thing, and I think this policy allows you to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, does anyone else want to come up and speak? Come on up. And just your name and your address, please, for the clerk.
Good afternoon, Christy Gardner-Basalan here with my husband, John. We live, work, and farm at 400 Johnson Road on the east side of the county. We're here tonight to speak to the changes proposed by the community planning permit system as the owners of Creekview Acres Nursery and Orchard, a 23-acre operation that we started 6 years ago, farming the property for the first time in nearly 50 years. In mid-June, I was asked to attend an online meeting for representatives of local farming organizations, including the CFFO. What I've learned was that the county intends to introduce many new regulations presented as protecting farmland, but that may likely have the opposite effect over time, especially for small farms. More generally, I worry that by over-regulating long-standing rural practices, the county is creating opportunities for conflict, driving up the costs of farming, food, country living, and municipal administration. Some of the activities that were described as requiring permits were farm tours, weddings, and pick your own fruit, because these are now going to be temporary farm activities. I find myself asking, what benefit does this bring to the municipality? What problem is this looking to solve? Farm tours and open houses are a big part of rural culture. We've already been to several ourselves this past year. Next week, 2 local horticultural societies are coming to visit us for free tours. Next year, I'll have to ask the county's permission in order to invite them. But also, when does a family reunion on the home farm tip the balance to a permanent event? What about a cousin's wedding? There's a big difference between a purpose-built event barn or space and celebrating milestones with families and friends in what feels like your backyard. Market gardens, pumpkin patches, orchard, and berry picking don't require large acreage, meaning that they're possible on small farms and homesteads, as well as part of larger farming operations. These help build food literacy, support local food security, and create affordable family fun close to home, as well as providing income for farm families. I'm struggling to understand why these need more municipal regulation. If we're thinking safety, that risk should be between me and my insurance company. If it's concerns about the farm produce sold at roadside stands, the local public health unit already exists to address food safety matters. What I also heard, though, was that the province allows any activity to be on farm diversified use, so long as it fits within the setbacks and footprint rules. But the county wants to tighten these down to only those directly benefiting the farm. This is incredibly subjective, but also threatens to undermine the financial viability of the farms that need this revenue to make ends meet and keep farming. We hear that there's no new farmers because it's too hard to buy in, so why is the county taking away one of the tools that we can use to make that business case for financing? In our experience, county staff aren't always familiar with normal practices for each agricultural commodity, especially the horticultural trades, so I'm concerned about the subjectivity when we determine benefit. And for the generational farmers, I ask whether this means a grandkid can't start their landscape or trades career out of the farm shop. Can the school bus driver still bring the bus home? Is small engine repair still allowed if you service lawnmowers as well as farm implements? Does custom work become contracting? And what about the excavating and hauling contractors who work for more than just farmers? They too may be finding that the money they relied on is no longer there to keep farming. When increased regulation tips the balance from protecting public interests to micromanaging property owners, I believe council must ask itself whether the CPPS is going to keep agricultural lands productive or undermine the rural economy. If we push small business towards urban areas, we're also pushing out jobs and shutting down the activities that keep families on the farm. I also ask what this might mean for volunteer firefighter recruitment, especially during the daytime calls. I also want to touch on the changes to the natural heritage zoning, specifically the transition from agricultural activities being permissible without asking permission and now moving to these being at the county's discretion. Setting aside that half our property is about to be rezoned from agricultural to natural heritage, including some of my ornamental gardens, I'm more concerned that we'll have to ask the county and our neighbors' permission to farm it going forward, as will all the other farmers who are about to be rezoned. This represents a departure from long-standing practice and invites neighbors who may not understand the realities of agricultural operations to weigh in on whether the farmer can continue as they always have. I believe this will put the county on a course towards more conflicts between farmers and rural residents trying to navigate why things work the way they have in the countryside. For us, it means that maintaining the exclusion fencing that keeps deer from the orchard could be reinterpreted as destroying natural heritage, and we may have to change our integrated pest management approach to meet the new setback requirements that didn't exist when we planted the fruit trees 5 years ago. Add this to the new rules for farm tours, pick your own fruit, and a roadside stand. I ask what this means for the viability of my farm and others like it. Turning to the bigger picture, since the county may not allow these lands to be farmed or good forestry practices, I ask whether the county has considered how the conservation land tax incentive will apply to the newly rezoned natural heritage lands, and what could this mean for the municipal budget? It is a full rebate, not a reduced rate like agricultural and managed forest programs offer, so there wouldn't be anything potentially collected under those conditions. I also ask what it means for the land values of the owners who will see that their property is changed significantly. But ultimately, I'm concerned that creating new restrictions for rural and agricultural properties The county will create new ways to complain about neighbors, open bylaw investigations, and drive up the costs of farming, food, and rural living, as well as creating more bureaucracy to administer all of this. This doesn't make the County of Brant a great place to live, work, or play. We also know what can happen when farmers are no longer able to farm their land. When we went to the Public Information Center in Burford last winter, nothing suggested that this would be the outcome of the CPPS. If it had, I would have spoken up back then. And I think many others would have too, because the tone on the call in June suggested that the broader farming community was looking for clearer communication about what's really on the table so they can provide substantive input. I appreciate that the general manager reached out yesterday offering to discuss my concerns, except what concerns me goes beyond our own operation and extends to all the small farms, homesteads, and rural properties engaged in agricultural activities, as well as the larger generational farms who could be adversely affected if the CPPS goes forward as written. I realize these concerns deserve to be heard by council and the community because I'd be doing a disservice to the agricultural and rural Brant communities if I did not speak up this afternoon. So I want to thank you for the opportunity, and John and I welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you. Is there any questions for the delegation? Seeing none, thank you. Who's next? Does anyone from the audience want to come up and speak? Any questions? I'll ask for the second time. Is there anyone in the room that wants to come up and speak? Come on up.
I really just had.
You can't speak from back there because the people at home can't hear you unless you use the microphone. And just your name and your address, please, for the clerk.
Mary Jane Brown, 561 German School Road, Paris, Ontario.
Thank you.
It's mainly a question because the past few weeks have been kind of busy in my life. And I'm interested in what Ms. Bazalian had raised about so many bylaws impacting agricultural lands. So I haven't had time to do a lot of homework on it. So could you give me an example as to what would, in your opinion, is causing an adverse impact to an existing agricultural operation if someone does do the odd repair and then they decide to do more of it along with their crop growth? I'm not quite following. Can you answer it? Or can
Come on back up.
staff?
Yeah.
Because this is something I really.
Chris, I was told that we can't go back and forth public time. You can leave your questions on the podium and we'll make sure they get answered, but.
Well, then could staff answer it as
Sure.
to give me an example as to how these bylaw changes will impact the agricultural zoning?
Through the mayor, so I believe some of what's being referred to as well is beyond the CPPS, but other implementation tools. So the Good Forestry Practices bylaw is an example. That is something that applies to forested areas. So it does provide restrictions on what can be clear cut and the opportunities to do that, noting that as long as there's some sort of evaluation done to determine the significance and meet the tests of the PPS, there are opportunities to consider changes to those. One of the things I think that's being pointed out here as well is the discrepancy between the current zoning bylaw and the proposed CPPS. We've had several inquiries come in here, so I'd like to just note that with respect to the natural heritage in particular, the 2012 official plan had a very similar natural heritage designation and overlay that applied to what is there today. For reasons unbeknownst to me, that wasn't fully carried over to bylaw 6116, the zoning. The policies and standards were there, but the mapping itself did not show the same protection that the official plan did. So there's a transparency and discrepancy issue there that we are trying to fix as part of this bylaw process. So the mapping that already existed, but in different spots, is being consolidated into one spot through the CPPS to give people a clearer idea of what permissions are available in those areas. And again, we've added something into the bylaw that you'll note with respect to natural heritage. is the opportunity for a kind of simple evaluation process. We recognize that not everyone wants to hire an ecologist, and we do have very well-informed and applicable staff here at the county, particularly with respect to trees. So there is an opportunity to leverage that ability and go through kind of an evaluation process, and that's something that this CPPS will set up that is not currently available to other people.
Okay.
And to the point of what other bylaws are being referred to, I'm not completely certain, but we can definitely follow up.
Okay, well, then if I just ask a specific question, for example, a current apple grower, if they are only growing apples and selling them from a farm stand or sending them off to a grocery store, if they decide, oh, I want to process them on the farm, does that mean they have to do a bylaw amendment? Because I believe it was stated that no bylaws can be amended for 5 years. Because to me, that would support growth. So is that an actual example of what Ms. Bazalian spoke to?
And through the mayor, so that example that you've given, so the growing of the apples would be considered an agricultural use, which is permitted. It's also permitted in the natural heritage zone. And pardon me, the processing of it becomes an agriculture-related use. So there's guidance provided by the province, and there's no need for an amendment to the bylaw. So what the bylaw does is it allows these permissions to happen as of right, but if there is a scale and scope of that particular use where it may require some considerations of, say, truck movements on the site, there's an opportunity to consider that through the community planning permit system, where we wouldn't have to apply, say, a full site plan control process to it. It would be a simplified process where we're just addressing the potential concerns and impacts on neighboring properties or to municipal infrastructure, but the use itself would be permitted without an amendment to the bylaw.
Okay. So I think I do understand, and I'd only like to point out my sideline is I am a member of Committee of Adjustment. I have been kicking around since 1995. And I note the stacks of paper that a number of councillors have brought to the meeting. And I realize minor variants, and yes, I agree, there's something that should definitely be addressed by staff. However, some of the applications I've seen, and I've been involved in county matters since, as I say, 1995, and even before then through a nonprofit housing. It can be quite extensive in time, and it seems there will be a number of new faces at the council tables this upcoming election and a new mayor. So maybe, as one person pointed out, it might be a good idea to defer this because we are looking at significant changes to the structure of the governing people, as well as a whole new idea, which these are things I haven't had time to research, and it seems there are developers and members of the public who would like a little more time to see what is happening. And yes, I did go to some of the open houses. It's been a lot of changes since the first meeting I went to. There were not many people at that. I really don't think that, I think maybe I'll guess at 100 people attended all of them. The size of the county today, I would say that's not a representative sample. So those are my opinions.
Thank you for those. The reason we ask everyone for their name and their address when they come to speak is so that we do have a record of it. And although it's not proper to have you and Christine going back and forth, you obviously can get all her information and you can speak to her again. I just couldn't let it go back and forth there.
Yes, but she did raise issues I hadn't even considered or were aware of.
You know, absolutely, and we should really explain what this pile of paper is because it doesn't happen very often. But our agenda for tonight was 800 pages before we started, and we received another 800 pages today and yesterday to this issue alone, and 200 more pages for the one that just happened, the first one. So, I mean, this is a 1,000-page agenda with comments and stuff. So, I mean, I can't tell you that I've read all of this because I certainly haven't. The elastic isn't even off one of them. So I mean, it's something that doesn't happen very often to us. Usually we get a chance to go through and at least have an opinion on what's in front of us, and we don't, or I don't today. I'm sure many of them don't today. But that'll be up to the council to make the recommendation to either defer it or do whatever they want to do. It's a council decision. But I'm going to wait until we close the public part. Is there anyone else in the room that wants to come up and speak? Hello, Henry. Just your name and your address, please.
My name is Henry Stolp. I'm at 2 Grammar Street South. I haven't read how many pages. I started downloading this thing about 3:30 this afternoon and recognized it was 1,753 pages. That's amazing. Anyway, we sent a letter to council and staff with respect to the CPPS. We're supportive of it. We agree with BHBA, and we would like to exclude the FSM. I haven't gotten into it at all. I'm just speaking on behalf of our company.
Does anyone have any questions for Henry? Do you want any specific answers from Brandon, from staff, or just?
No, I'm not looking for it.
Okay, we're done. Thank you. Anyone else in the room that wants to come up and speak? Noting it's a lot of information. Mr. Swanson?
David Swanson, 384 Robinson Road. In the report there, Brandon, you had mentioned that Brant County is the first municipality to proceed with the CPP here? Yeah.
Brandon, do you want to respond?
Through the mayor, so the city of Peterborough and City of Huntsville are two others that have it in effect. But in our context within the greater Golden Horseshoe, we will be one of the first.
Don't go too far. Claire, when she asked a question about the industrial zones being kind of condensed into one classification, is that the trend? Is that what also happened in the other places that proceeded with this new method of permitting?
So through the mayor, what I'll suggest is that is something that's downloaded by the province. Various municipalities take certain amounts of time to catch up to that. We're opting to implement it now because we've gotten that direction, but I don't know, Justine, if you have any insight on Peterborough or Huntsville specifically?
Through the mayor, a number of other municipalities are looking at modifying their land use regulations in alignment with a more streamlined or reduced number of zones or precincts. The City of Peterborough Community Planning Permit System, which was approved by council last week, does look at a significant reduction in overall number of zones as well, for example. But certainly each municipality approaches it in a slightly different way. So I wouldn't say that the County of Brant approach for industrial areas is exactly the same as the City of Peterborough. I don't want to make that comparison.
Yeah, I was just curious. It looks like the homogenization or harmonization of rules is happening, and you can imagine, on the permitting side, everything is probably going to want to trend in the same way. And I'm curious, did you use or is there a plan to use, like, for these kinds of interactions, when people have questions about these, is there a large language model, like an AI, that has been, kind of in the works to handle these questions?
Through the mayor, and I apologize, I'm just going to sit here so I don't have the back and forth, but at this point, that's unknown to me. I'm sure there are places in the world that are exploring that, but the County of Brant is not considering it at this time.
Yeah, okay, because it sounds like there's some questions out there. Anyway, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Does council have any questions for the delegation? No. Anyone else in the room that wants to come up and speak? Ask questions. Okay, come on up. Yeah. And just your name and your address, please, for the clerk.
My name's Michael Carr, 296 West Quarter Town Line Road, Harley.
Thank you.
I'm a manager of a senior living park, and we've been waiting for a year-round license for almost 5 years now. We're an 11-month park, and we've done everything possible that the council's asked us. We have a lot of seniors in there are wondering what's happening. So I don't know, Brandon, you on that, or
Okay.
looking after any of that? I don't know who looks after that.
Through,
Zoning for a year round is still, we're 11 months now.
yeah, and through the mayor, so as discussed at the previous meeting, so that is included as part of this community planning permit system bylaw. So provided this one comes into effect with the new zoning, that would take effect on August 1st. That 11 months would go to 12 months for those mobile home
We've
parks.
done everything possible,
That's right.
right? Okay, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the room that has anything they want to say or speak to that's in front of us? Seeing no one else, I'm going to ask for the second time, is there anyone in the room that wants to speak to what's in front of us? I'll ask for a third and final time, is there anyone in the room that wants to speak? Seeing none, we'll call this part of the meeting closed, and I'm going to get council to get it on the floor for me, please. Councillor Pierce, Councillor Oakley. It's on the floor. What does council want to do? The recommendation is in front of us. Councillor Bell, you're first.
Yeah, I have to say I have a lot of questions. And that is with the benefit of reading probably most of the documentation. And I think most of my colleagues probably have lots of questions as well. So I'm not sure that if I wanted to get all my questions answered, we'd be here till midnight. I think a more efficient process might be for us to be sending in questions to staff and then reconvening to address the motion itself. Yeah. And I would actually make the motion to defer this on that basis.
Yeah, I think Councillor Haley is your seconder. Councillor Haley was a little overwhelmed with how fast and furious things were coming at her today. So she did show some concern. Councillor Chambers?
I understand the deferral recommendation in motion. I'm just wondering, before it's placed before us, some of the other councilors may have some questions that
of course
may not be able to ask if it's deferred. So I would ask that I be allowed to ask a couple questions before we call the question.
Absolutely, Councillor Chambers.
And while that motion is on hold, could I just ask staff, an important part of this whole process will be transitioning from one to the other. And that could get very, very complicated. And I'm just wondering if you can outline to me in some minor detail, understanding that it'll be a question that could take hours to explain, but can you just outline how the transition will occur from one to the other, including in your answer a time frame and what happens if there are questions from the public along the way through the transition, and how are they going to be dealt with?
And through the mayor to Councillor Chambers. So with respect to the transition, this is a very kind of important topic. I guess as simply as I can input this would be that if something has received an approval already, that approval will stand. It's not being changed. If something is in process, currently, and it has been considered complete. We have been working with those individual property owners and developments to transition them to the new process already, considering that. So they're almost doing two kind of parallel applications as one, but recognizing that if the changes are made and they hop to the new framework, we're ready for that. So we've been working over the last several months on that, and we're expecting those particular projects, which have been outlined as an attachment in the report as well, to kind of wrap up within the next 6 months. That's the goal. If they do not, there is a 2-year period of transition that can be extended later, but the idea is that we're offering that as kind of an opportunity to continue those conversations, recognizing that this is intended to be an iterative process, and there will be changes that staff can bring forward to the bylaw if needed. But then anything that would come in following the enactment date would then be fully under the new system.
And I understand there is the transition process in place, approved, et cetera. I'm just curious as to, as we move through the transition, if members of the public or the development community or council or anybody else for that matter have issues that arise during the transition that we've approved, how are they going to be dealt with?
Yeah, and through the mayor, so what we would look to do is we'll likely have an online submission form that provides that opportunity for people to reach out to us directly. We've done that through this process consistently over the last several months. There's also going to be information going out to the entire county, again, to let them know about this project and invite them to speak to staff. One of the benefits of moving to this process with kind of fewer applications coming to council or coming to this committee of adjustment is it opens up that time during the day for staff to instead of being working on the report and preparing for those specific meeting times, to have those meetings with the public one-on-one and have the conversations that help people understand what's actually going on. So just know that there is a dedication and a commitment from staff to, over the next 2, probably 5 years, while this is in place, we understand that there needs to be flexibility because things aren't going to necessarily align with what was there before, and a willingness to work with property owners, individual owners. One other thing I will say to that is we're going to continue trying to reach out to the public. We obviously, it's one thing to invite the public to reach out to us and have those conversations. We continue to try to do that. But something we will be doing over the next several months is planning for some planning pop-ups at the fairs and various other activities where someone, at least our presence is there. We can give them our business card. We can get in contact with them, let them know about the project, and then have them kind of follow up with us after the fact. Because I'm sure they don't want to talk about planning while they're thinking of going on the Tilt-A-Whirl, but at least they're there and they can learn a little bit about the county and we can be present for them. So another piece of the transition strategy.
Councillor Chambers.
And just a final question. You use it, sounds like last night, used the word "we" a lot, and you're talking about staff, obviously. I'm just wondering, as overseers of the policy and the process, that being the council, how will council be apprised of the many questions that maybe run through staff that we won't know about, and how are the overseers going to be made aware of some of the issues that come forward so that we can oversee them? Because if it all happens at staff, members of council at this table and in the next term may or should be, I would think, apprised of what some of the issues are so they can oversee the process.
And through the mayor, absolutely great point. I think one of the things we can offer is kind of consistent communication with council, whether it be in the Friday file or a monthly kind of piece of information about common things that are coming in. We can offer some side meetings if that's needed. We can provide updates at the council meetings as we implement. But the idea is that, yes, there will be communication, and I think one of the things you'll see over, provided this eventually gets approved, one of the things you'll see is a more fulsome implementation strategy, and we can have some of those specifics integrated into that to say, yes, once a week you're going to receive this information, it'll be posted on the public website, et cetera, et cetera. So creates that transparency and commitment, keeping everyone in the loop on the education piece of it, so that there is an understanding as the framework needs to be adjusted of what those adjustments would look like.
Just a final comment. It is important to keep everybody in the loop because the counselors will be asked questions by the public and we won't know what the staff has said and the staff won't know what council's saying. And it could be a real free-for-all of misinformation flying around. So it's very important, I think, to have council, staff, and public in the same loop with the same explanations, et cetera. So I think that's very, very key if this is going to fly.
Jeremy?
Through the mayor to council, definitely good points here. As a staff, we want to we're committing to being open to the public, to listen, talk to them. And as you already know, I make myself aware that council can reach out anytime with questions and we will get back to you fairly promptly as best we can. So that is a commitment you will receive moving forward. As Brandon already mentioned, we will be coming back in 6 months with an update of how things are going. So that will be within obviously a new council. When the new council comes in, we will be doing training to bring them up to speed too and help them through the process. So we are committed to the council and this community to make it work and to make planning work within this county in the best way possible. So that is the structure we've been working with. I think you've been hearing that today is Brandon's responding, our team responds quickly, trying to work with the public to make things work well. So I want to reiterate that. That is our goal here.
Any other, Councillor Oakley?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, a question sort of percolated by one of the comments from one of the delegations. I'm just curious in regards to the FSM charges, how that interacts with grants that we're applying for that involve waiving or reducing development charges.
Through the mayor, I don't know if Jeremy or Alicia, you might have any commentary on that. As far as we know, there isn't an interaction. And maybe Justine, I don't know if you know anything from the other municipalities.
Through the mayor, the Facility Services Matters is most closely aligned with the community benefits charge. So it's different than development charges, and so any potential grants from the province or feds on development charges, that is a separate stream. I don't believe there's any interaction as it relates to community benefits charge. And where a municipality uses a community planning permit system, a community benefits charge does not apply, and instead a municipality has the ability to set up facility services and matters. So all that to say, I don't believe there's any interaction or impact. It is, you should think about it as an alternative community benefits charge.
Thank you.
Councillor Miller?
No, I'll support the deferral, and I do have a few questions, so I'll leave most of those. I guess we're sending them directly to Brandon. Is that how we're doing it?
Chairman?
Sure.
Yes, through the mayor, yeah. Any of the questions, you can send them directly to Brandon, and he'll keep myself as well as the, others apprised, and we will respond to them. He'll share them with the policy team. So Brandon may not respond, but the policy team will get back.
Okay.
We'll probably compile another package then of councillor questions and responses. That might help, because if you're all coming together, we make sure then we're sharing what everyone's asking, and we may address any overlaps too. So try to bring that together with a future.
Okay.
When it comes back.
Okay, fair enough. I'll leave out the specific question, but I did want to ask. I'm not quite sure what the recommendation is before us, because we're to approve this with an implementation date of August 1st. That's my understanding. Is that correct? That was the original intention?
That's the original recommendation.
But listening to the public this afternoon, there's a few things I think that could be tweaked. Would they be incorporated into a final version?
I would hope so.
Yeah, through the mayor. So if there's a deferral, that we could still try and come back before August 1st, we can talk about what maybe that looks like. But regardless, the idea is that any of the outstanding things would be addressed prior to coming forward. And the reason we chose August 1st is because there is that gap in August with no council meetings. So it kind of cleans things up nicely with the current planning files to end them in July, and gives us that 1 month of opportunity to start ironing out implementation pieces.
Okay. And it's a big task, you know, you want to get it right, that's the only thing. And then I just wanted to ask a question that was brought up, and then you addressed it, Brandon, and that was just the mapping. You said, and I know we talked about before, we said we're not changing designations from the official plan. But at the same time, you said the mapping for the natural heritage isn't quite up to snuff?
Through the mayor, so we've noticed that over the last several years, there's been review and refinement done to the natural heritage system from what was in place in the 2012 official plan and then implemented through the 2016 official plan. So there was the discrepancy lies between the 2012 plan and the 2016 zoning. Okay. What we are trying to fix is now we've reevaluated that with our 2023 official plan. That is the basis for our natural heritage system. And for the most part, it aligns with what was in the 2012 plan. But the zoning from 2016 did not align with that plan. So our zoning now that we would adopt through the CPPS is required to be consistent with and conform with our OP. So that's where the kind of discrepancy has been passed along, and we're dealing with it now as we implement this.
Maybe we could get it dealt with by August 1st, I don't know. I've seen, you know, just areas that, okay, it got ignored, and Sumac grew up, and now it's called natural heritage, and it was never natural heritage, so I'd like to see that fixed up. And then the last thing I'll say, and Councillor Oakley brought it up, but I do have issues with that FSM, I really do, but I'll leave that for a question, and good suggestion on Councillor Bell's part.
If I could too, through the mayor, just to add one more note on the natural heritage piece, you'll see there's mention of a potential natural heritage strategy in the report. That's something the municipality has not undertaken in the past. And many municipalities do that to kind of at a high level evaluate the natural heritage system throughout the municipality. So that's something we're considering as a potential project over the next 5-10 years to bring forward to through the budget process. Obviously, it would be decided upon through that. But the idea is that it would then inform, again, our next official plan update and so on. So there's that kind of integrated planning exercise. It's secondary planning for trees, essentially. There's that work that needs to be done, and there's potential to do that to help address some of the concerns.
Councillor House.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a question specific to Councillor Bell's, just clarifying the timing but before I get to that, I want to take a minute just to embarrass Brandon a little bit.
Great.
I just want to say how incredibly impressive it is, the depth of your knowledge on this and how quick you are to respond. It's just so professionally incredible. I just wanted to say that. And you know, I had constituents today firing questions at him, and he's responding very, very quickly and very, very clearly. And you're doing a great job.
Thank you. And it is a team effort, I will say that, but I appreciate that.
But if Councillor Bell could just clarify, because we've had so many topics where people have said, why not defer this till the new council? Why not defer this to the new council? And like many of the subjects, and this is just my personal opinion, I don't think you want to saddle a new council with some of these big, heavy decisions. So if Councillor Bell could just clarify what his intent on the timing of a deferral.
Yeah, well, just taking up your point that you get quick answers from Brandon, I'm sure that all the questions we compile, Brandon will come back with quick answers. So in my mind, I was thinking the next planning council, which I think is next week.
It would be good if the deferral could be the 28th,
if we could just
the
add it as-
28th or before, just for the timing of the 1st of August.
So just for our sake, to clarify, it depends a little bit on how many questions you give and realizing if Brandon's responding when you might receive our response. We don't want to bombard you and hit you next week Monday, because that's when we have a chance to get through all, let's say, 3,000 questions. Not that I expect 3,000. So we will do our best, I think, to achieve that, but realizing we want to make sure we get time to do that appropriately and respond in enough time. So if that's not achievable based on the number of questions we have, and the next plan meeting is large, I'm assuming we're just looking at the bylaw and then approving it on a public process. is there flexibility that it does come back a bit later if we can't achieve next week? We will do our best to achieve it, I guess is the question.
So my thinking is, we've gone through the public process. We've got the public input. So what's left is the questions from council, and then come back to effectively debate the recommendation. So that, I thought, was what we would do at the next planning council meeting.
We will make it happen and Brandon will kill me and his team, but we will make it happen.
We're going to go to Councillor Pierce before we put anything else on the floor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So a couple things. I support the deferral, but I don't think it's, and no disrespect to our planning staff, I don't think it's possible to get everything answered by next week. I appreciate the fact here that we've got an August 1st date that's posted in here, and I understand your rationale for doing that with having August off. But a couple things that have been noted throughout this whole process is the fact that, you know, the CPPS overall is new. There's only the two that have it implemented now, and they're site-specific. They're not municipality-wide. Ours is the first that I believe that is municipality-wide, and it was noted tonight that we're the largest land area thus far to implement the CPPS. There's been questions around here. I've got a couple myself, and I know there's a few around here. We've had questions tonight from delegations that have gone up. I just don't want to rush this in the sense that, to your note, once it's in, yes, we as council can amend the bylaw, but we need to ensure that the public have all their questions answered too. If we think we can do it by next week and get this in by August 1st, then you guys are bigger machines than I thought you were. But I just, in discussions in the last couple meetings that we've had about this and discussions tonight, and, you know, in all my time on council, we've got a 1,700-page package, which is crazy to think about that. So again, I don't want us to be I don't want staff to be in a position where they're trying to hammer something through and you know, not intentionally or anything like that, but have a misstep or not quite exactly how we want it when we put it in. I want to make sure that when I fully support this, don't get me wrong, but I want to make sure that when we put this in, it's exactly how we want it. And honestly, if we've got to push it another month with, and again, I appreciate your rationale of having that August off to, you know, go from one to another and start the thought of the transition. But I just want to make sure that we're giving ourselves ample time to do this right and not rush it in. You don't have to respond to that. That's just.
Just a point of clarification. There's more municipalities that have a CPPS on a site-specific basis, such as Guelph, et cetera.
Right.
It's only those two that have them on the larger, there's more. So there's more than just the two. So just clarifying, there's more than two. There's multiple municipalities out there with a CPPS. So just wanted to make that, it sounded like you were saying there's only two, but there is more. So I just wanted to clarify.
But it's still very new.
It is very
There's
new.
very few municipalities that have it. So
Yeah,
again.
it is very new, and we understand that, and definitely, and that's why we're going to be working through this process with people and teaching them, as we would with any zoning process, walk them through and getting us to the best recommendation moving forward.
Through the mayor, if I could just.
Because, excuse me.
Yeah, of course.
Because we have to call a recess to fix the bylaws anyway, and because the mayor needs to have a recess right now, I'm going to call a 5-minute recess. Thank you for that recess. I appreciated it. Okay, let's get back to where we were. So,
Mr.
Councillor
Mayor, I'm
Pierce?
not sure if Brandon remembers what he was going to say, but I'd like to hear his
Oh, I'm
response.
sorry, Brandon was speaking.
Before he was kind of recessed.
Through the mayor, I wasn't
Brandon
speaking.
and then Councillor Pierce.
It's okay. And through the mayor, thank you. Sorry, I was just going to suggest that I do really appreciate that this is new and this is a big decision. I think if what we're looking for is perfection, we're not going to find that. And the point of that is that this process, and like we've said kind of in this reporting, is it's intended to be iterative. We recognize we're not going to get it all right at the first shot. That's the same as our zoning bylaw. We see numerous amendments to our zoning bylaw site specifically. Those are examples of us not necessarily getting it right the first time and people coming in and asking us to change it. So I just want to put it in that context that as Jeremy said, we're dedicated to working with people. We recognize that just getting us to this new framework is fundamental to really implementing our official plan the way it needs to be implemented. And if there's pieces of the bylaw we want to take out or look at later, that's also an option. Well, obviously the conversation about the deferral itself and coming back later can happen as needed. I think my professional recommendation at this point would be not to defer past August 1st, like to still try and address, and I think we can address some of those concerns and comments that come in and still aim for that August 1st enactment date. So I'll just leave that with council, and if there's any other questions about it, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, so Councillor Pierce is first. Okay, Councillor Haley.
I just wanted him to be able to respond, that's all.
Okay, Councillor Haley.
Thank you. I just wondered, is there any other opportunity? Is there any other, I think it is a big rush for next Tuesday. Is there any other meeting that we could tack this on to?
Well, we ran into trouble last time we tried to tack something onto another meeting. We were there till after 11 o'clock because so I'm just concerned that we don't get ourselves into another one of those. That was a bad night. I mean, everyone was punch drunk at 11 o'clock, I think. But we can check for some dates, Councillor Haley. I think the sooner the better if we can. But, it is a big deal and it is a big change. So if it needs some time, we have to give it some time. But we'll check with the clerks. Councillor Oakley.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I think one of my questions has already been answered in regards to the deferral. If we can't make it next week, are we still going to be able to make it within July? Hearing that we are, I'm happy with that. Similar to Councillor Howe's, I think this can and should be dealt with within this term of council. And then my other sort of just comment that I would make along the lines of what Brandon just said, I think if you asked any one of us around this table to actually go through and flawlessly answer questions of our current zoning bylaw, I don't think any of us could do it. I also have yet to hear an example of us asking our policy and planning staff on this and us not get a answer to it. So I think, enemy shan't be perfect shan't be the enemy of good here, and I think we need to get this moving. Thank you.
Councillor McAlpine.
So I'm just following up from one of the questions that came up earlier. And I think it's covered under policy, or CPP, yes. When I read through it, that the on-farm diversified uses is actually clarified now what can be done. It is actually expanded from what it used to be. And so I wanted, if you could expand on that too.
And through the mayor, thank you for that. So that is correct. What we are doing is refining what can be considered a non-farm diversified use. And we've had these conversations around in the council chambers previously with the official plan amendment that was recently passed. The idea behind any of those policies in that agricultural area is really to find ways to support farming and protect farmland. So that's what it comes down to. And sometimes there's personal objectives that may not be met by kind of higher level objectives, but I think what we're trying to do with these policies right now for non-farm diversified use, for example, there's a minor site plan process that they have to go through. The idea is that we shift away from that more complicated process and go towards kind of licensing. So there's less that we would actually be doing and fewer questions that we'd be asking, just the important ones, and not everyone is subject to the same process that way. So two pieces there, trying to kind of refine what is the on-farm diversified use and what's allowed as that to make sure it is supportive of the farming area. And then the second piece is that the streamlining of the process where that's appropriate.
And that's extended actually to at-home businesses as well. So it's along the same line. So we have at-home based business and industrial use for the more rural areas. So overall, yeah, I support that. So this is something I've been pushing for a while too. So.
Is there any other questions that need to be asked tonight before we have the review and an opportunity to give the questions back to Brandon? Councillor Bell, then you can take it back. And there is a council meeting on the 28th that is not packed right to the brim right now, which might be the most appropriate place to have it tacked on if we're going to tack it on, if they can get the work done. If they can't get the work done, it doesn't really matter. But if they can, the 28th seems like the best meeting to put it on, that we're not here till midnight.
I leave it in the good hands of planning to work it out.
So do you want to just do you want to make your motion?
So I make the motion to defer our decision on this package until such time the staff have had a chance to read through all of our questions and come back with brilliant answers that will help us come to a very quick conclusion.
Councillor Haley is your seconder, I believe, still. Any other questions before we call the vote? Councillor Haley?
So can we still submit questions? I have questions I didn't ask tonight, but we can still submit them. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that's what we're going to do then. We're going to defer it until whatever date works for the clerks and for the planning department. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We're not going to go in camera for anything. We do need to do the bylaws. Now, we obviously have an adjustment. That was my real reason for the deferral, you know, to fix the bylaws. But we still have to do the bylaws regarding downtown Paris. So I need a mover for the bylaws. Councillor Coleman, seconder Councillor Pierce, and Spencer's going to read the bylaws as they appear, noting that we're taking away anything that's been deferred for tonight.
Through your worship, the motion would be that bylaw 8226 and bylaw 8926 be read a first time.
All those in favor of the first reading of the bylaw? Second reading, please, Spencer.
Through your worship, the motion for the second reading of the bylaws would be that bylaws 8226 and 8926 be read a second time and all preambles and clauses be adopted.
Are there any questions to the second reading of the bylaws? See now, call the vote. Second reading of the bylaws. And I can do it for me one more time, please, Spencer.
Through your worship, the final reading of the bylaws would be that bylaws 8226 and 8926 be read a third time, passed, signed, and executed.
And all those in favor of the third and final reading of the bylaws? That's passed, which takes us to number 7 on our agenda, which is our next meeting and adjournment. Is there anything else for the betterment of the county of Brant? Seeing none, I'm looking for someone to adjourn us. Councillor